Well, interesting. Is that good?
I think.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order at 12:44 p.m. And I'd like to take a privileged motion that we approve the agenda as presented. Are there any objections to the agenda? No? Okay, then I'm going to move on for approval of the minutes. Do we have any motions for the approval of the minutes? Someone want to move to approve the minutes? All right, Matthew. So we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? Jason? All those in favor? Or are there comments on the minutes? No? Okay. And by the way, there was a typo that said March at the top. That's been fixed for the public version of it. All right, so then I'd like to move that we approve the minutes. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, this motion passes unanimously, unless there's dissent from the video call?
No.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. So if anyone objects to anything on the consent agenda, it can be moved to the regular agenda in an order decided by council. But if there's no objections, then we'll just move forward with the consent agenda items. So there are committee procedural amendments. So the first one is a motion that council approves procedural amendments recommended by Budget Committee to Procedure 5, Budget Preparation, as presented. Moved by Kurt McMillan. Is there a second for this? All right, Dion will second. Is there any opposition? No? All right, all those in favor of the procedural amendments? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so there's 2 abstentions. Would you like them noted? Andrew? Would you like your abstention noted?
No, I didn't.
Oh, sorry, who abstained? Oh, no? Okay. So no noted abstentions, but there's 2 abstentions. The next is that council ratifies the editorial amendments made by officers of council to Procedure 10, Committees of Student Council, as presented. So these are just getting rid of the Leadership Awards Committee, making the Budget Committee definition section consistent with the budget procedure, and changes to CLAC that will actually take effect when the rest of CLAC's mandate change comes through from Savannah. So I guess I'll move this. Is there a second? Jason? All right. All those in favor?
Sorry, is this a new item?
Yes. This is a new item. It says be it further resolved. They're separate motions.
Okay.
So all those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Anyone? Nope. Okay. So this item passes unanimously. All right, on to the reports. So executive reports. The executives have attached written reports, so you can scroll down to see those. All the information here is in order of the information presented. So the first formal report will be from the president. Richard?
Okay. So let me just. Anyway, it's in the agenda. So over
Just pick up a little bit. Richard.
Give me 1 second. All right. So since last council meeting, a number of things have happened. A lot of meetings have happened. We have decided on the date for the fall general meeting to be set on October the 24th, 2018. More details incoming, but it should be set to start at noon in the SLC Great Hall. And as well, Matt and I met with Kathleen Wynn on her stop here at the University of Waterloo. And we spoke about we had a roundtable with students from the university and in the community at large, just speaking about student issues and issues that affected the student experience in universities across Ontario as well. SLC PAC expansion is currently still going. Meetings are still fruitful. We're deciding on sort of the nitty-gritty things right now. So the design of the interior space and the furniture as well. So things are going smoothly, nothing major. We also, the sexual violence response and prevention, the policy 42. That committee has been meeting and everything's going well. And in terms of the feds committees, with respect to policy and procedures, President's Advisory, Waterfowl mascot, and also the task force on geo engagement. Those emails should have been sent out. If you guys haven't gotten it, please let me know. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Further questions for the President? No? Okay. So then the next report is from the Vice President of Student Life. Savannah couldn't be here today. She has attached her report to the agenda. The thing she asked me to make sure was brought up was that the Internal Administration Committee will be meeting on the 21st of June, the Campus Life Advisory Committee on the 25th of June, the Internal Funding Committee on the 26th of June. If you're a member of these committees, please make sure you take her polling information or look out in your inbox for her agenda. Okay. So then the next report is from the Vice President of Operations and Finance.
Cool. So for myself, not too much in regards to council, but my action plan skeleton is created. Myself and the exact team will be going over that to probably get that sent out in July. Been doing a lot of meetings, a bunch of stakeholders and managers and directors that report to myself, moving forward with feds. And budget committee wise, I had a phone call with budget committee since we're on different cities. Had a nice phone call, talked about the roles. We were trying to, we're throwing in that procedural change that we can talk about as well. And trying to create a more visually appealing process for the budget instead of just an Excel spreadsheet. So that's something that we will be working on as well. We're planning to meet again in July.
Okay, questions for the Vice President of Operations and Finance? No? Okay. Matthew?
All right. So most of what I've done this week or month has made its way into the written report. The things that aren't in there that I think you should be aware of, and then also.
Matt, just speak up a little bit.
Thank you. So working on an action plan and it's coming together. We'll go to board soon. I just got back from the Coucil Strategy Conference where we are planning out our advocacy priorities to the provincial government for the coming year, as well as some media campaigns that we're running. Those are going to go back with our home office staff in Toronto to be polished up so that we can get to work on those when the legislative session resumes in fall. EAC and Education Advisory Council and Co-op Students Council are both meeting every other week on Monday. Essentially trap people for 4 hours, get everything done once. And the only other thing that people should be aware of is we've had a bit of a rearrangement with the people who we work with in co-op. Both of our co-op students, or co-op student experience managers, that is their title, have taken on secondments or other roles within the university. So that means that we're going to be working on transitioning in new people. That shouldn't have any big effects on the co-op deep dive. Hannah Beckett, former co-op affairs commissioner, is becoming the project manager, now being employed by the university to be the project manager to see the project through to its conclusion. And if anything notable happens with the staffing changes, you're aware. It's just at a bit of a early time where we're kind of switching around.
Are there questions for the Vice President of Education? Or if not, can people on the camera please mute their microphones?
I'll send it to me as well.
Is there anything else?
No, everything else is in my report. And you can asking questions about the stuff I just said or the stuff in the report.
Any questions for the Vice President of Education? Nope. All right, remember guys, good questions is how you hold executives to account and your officers. So, reports from the officers. I'm probably the only one here with the report, but I don't know. Chris? Nope. Okay. So, some quick updates on what we've been doing. We've been rewriting the procedures involving officers, involving meetings and committee meetings to follow through on council's desire that committee meetings attendance can impact your attendance score at council. If your attendance score at council is too low, recall, you can be removed from the body. So we are working to make committee attendance matter a little bit more. We're also going to be getting committee attendance reports and updates attached to the minutes in the future. So that'll be happening shortly. The hiccup on that right now is we're sorting out how to strengthen the officers of council as a group. And whether or not the president should be the default presiding officer until council appoints a speaker. So that would be that the president serves as speaker unless council appoints one other than him or her. Okay, so that's all in terms of those updates from me. Actually, Matt, actually, sorry, it's in business hours in a minute, so never mind. And the only other important update is that Germany lost the game, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move to, do they have questions, sorry, for, yes?
So you're talking about removing people from their seats if they don't attend enough meetings?
Yes, that's already happens.
How would that affect the president?
You'd be removed from council. You wouldn't be removed from your role as president of yourself.
Okay, so then the vote of the president on council, who would fill that?
Your society would determine it, I imagine. But council removes members for failing to attend, and we're working to make it so that if you fail to attend committee meetings, you'll also be removed from council. The idea there is you represent people, and if you're not attending, then those people go unrepresented. Yes?
So, in a hypothetical situation, you removed me because I've missed too many meetings, and my society goes, okay, we've selected some new person to sit on this council, it's Katie.
No, it would be, so that would be ultra vires, beyond the powers of the society, because you've already been removed, so you wouldn't be put back in place unless council saw fit to forgive you for lack of attendance. Okay, are there any other questions on procedural updates for any of the executives or the officers? No? Okay, then we'll move on to business arising from the minutes, because there's no special orders. So the first business arising from the minutes is the committee dissolution. So this is just for your information that the Leadership Awards Committee has been consolidated under the Internal Administration Committee. Membership of the IAC has remained unchanged so far. If council wishes to, that's why this is for information discussion. But because of the dissolution of the Leadership Awards Committee, the board of directors lost one seat on that committee. And the president lost one seat on that committee, so that's now been consolidated under the Student Life portfolio. So Student Life decides Student Life Awards and the Leadership Awards, and remains the chair of the IAC, but administers the combined functions of both committees. If you guys think we should add a director there as a seat, that's a possibility. We can do that. That's very much up to you. So if you see that this needs discussion, please go ahead.
Matt, I have a question because I know it's something that Savannah has talked to me about. Is the Leadership Awards Committee currently in the council procedures?
Not the ones we just reapproved.
Okay.
I got rid of it. And it's particularly because the council last meeting ordered that the committee be dissolved.
Excellent.
So if council thinks that a director had a seat on the Leadership Awards Committee, as did a former winner of the award, if that's something that we think the committee should bring back, we can impose those membership requirements on the IAC as well. So it's very much up to you guys. Right now, IAC is composed, I believe, of two councilors, 2 at-large members, and the vice president student life as chair. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll move on to the distribution of council seats. So I will yield the floor to Matt here to address this, because Matt wrote the memorandum on behalf of the exec board as to what happened here.
So we have a little bit of confusion as to why the seat was, why engineering was not allocated as many seats. We have one email chain which suggests it was because NSOC had had two presidents and it was confusion on how the vote counts work. A subsequent email that came up after the board had been briefed on this and had decided to allocate one more seat into elections. Another change came to light, which was that when someone from our IT department had pulled the numbers from the university, it just seems that math had more students than engineering. This did not sit well with me because I looked at the student headcounts. So I looked at the student headcounts and gave a drastically different number from what that information was. So I'm going to, the board has made its decision and is going to add another seat, and I don't think it's prudent for them to do that. I'm going to be meeting with the registrar this month to try and figure out which of those two data sources. One of them is pulled from the university IT systems. One is from IST that they put publicly on the website. We need to figure out which of those more accurately represents our membership. So I'll be meeting with the registrar, and we will hopefully have a report for you in August or September as to which source we've chosen to go with, and hopefully an internal protocol to make sure that the allocation of seats going forward is clear and transparent.
So just to reiterate, one additional engineering council seat has been added to reflect the fact that current student headcount lends itself to the thought that there should be an additional seat. Okay, additionally for information,
I think you had questions.
Yeah, other questions? So, Jerry?
I'm just curious how much of a discrepancy there were between the two data sources.
It was a couple thousand, which was enough to spare the seat. I have a suspicion, so I'm speculate quickly that it may have to do with how software engineering, CFM, and double degree students are counted. So we're going to be looking closely at our bylaws to figure out what the actual definition of membership is and trying to do something so that we're internally consistent.
If I may suggest for the exec board that students should be, so what last term's officers, or last good years got officers of councils, the council decided that students in multiple faculties should be able to choose the faculty they run for and faculty they, if they choose to run, and the faculty they count towards in head count, but should be able to nominate for both, for elections for both faculties. So if that's something doable.
As to the actual capabilities, I'm not sure and have to have further discussions, and that will probably all make its way into this report on seat allocation that we're moving towards for August, September.
Jason?
For an engineering student that might want to run for that seat, like what should I direct them to do?
I think we are still figuring that out. Nomination, we got it up, I believe. Richard might be able to speak to this. I don't know if we got it put up before the nomination period closed, and I don't know if anybody ran. But I think what we're planning to do is to go on a rolling basis, which is actually what we've traditionally done, where anybody can put their name up for an empty seat after the by-election period, and after a certain amount of time, if their name isn't contested, then they get the seat. So there should be an ability to nominate. The person should have the ability to put forward a nomination through vote.rights.ca.
Keep in mind there will be a yes and no vote on the individual based on most recent bylaw changes, if they're running on this.
So I should wait until it gets put up on vote.rights.ca?
If it isn't already.
It isn't.
Okay.
Were we talking about the engineering seat, the vacancy, right? So as Matt said, it is on a rolling basis. So what? Currently, we are in. Tomorrow will be the campaign period for the current seats that are being contested. So unfortunately, according to current procedures, we can't have additional nominations from any other vacancy until these by-elections are completely over. After which, because there is still a vacancy, it is quote-unquote rolling, which means you can nominate yourself and have that period where you can be contested during that time. And then I believe we going on Seneca's, what Seneca said, we will have a yes no for that as well.
The other thing I was going to contemplate getting your opinions on, in the meantime, because this is a process, right? And if this ends, then they have to nominate, and they have to wait a couple of weeks to see if they are unopposed, and then it has to be a yes/no vote. In the meantime, if there is a council meeting, I would like it that both NSHOC presidents get a vote in the meantime, so that at least the engineering constituency isn't underrepresented.
I don't think that's consistent with our bylaws, so.
Yeah, it's a little bit ambiguous. That's the problem.
It says no more than one society person should have voted in a council. I get the sentiment.
What does council think? Yes?
Would that be repeated?
Yeah, so should both society presidents for engineering society have a vote until the seat can get filled?
So right now, the societies also have a vote on our council.
All society presidents have a vote except for engineering. Engineering, the on-term society president gets a vote based on the bylaws.
So when they count these seats, they account for these presidents?
Yes, and that's what there was an accounting error here.
Because of these presidents or because
Yes.
of the students?
Because of the presidents. Because there's 25 full voting seats on council, of which the presidents count as one. But the presidents for engineering, there's two of them, and that is one potential source for where this issue might have come from, for having an undercounted seat.
So what action did we want to take?
The thing I was proposing that we recommend to the board for consideration would be allowing both engineering society presidents to have a vote until the seat gets properly filled. Allow the society to fill the vacancy in the meantime. Yes.
Yeah, well, that is a good idea. It is played against bylaws, so I think that's just something we'll have to deal with.
Okay. It's just if council had particularly strong views on it, what's a 130 section bylaw change anyway, so the board couldn't make an amendment to it. Okay. Unless there's other questions with regard to the seat discrepancy, we'll move on with the agenda. All right. So carry over from the last set of minutes, the External Advisory Review Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Education Advisory Committee, is tasked to explore our membership in external advocacy organizations like USA, the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. Matt, this was carried over from the motion you tabled last meeting. Do you have?
I do not have that much.
Okay. Would you like to table it indefinitely, or would you like to table it to the next meeting? Will you have some at the next meeting?
We could either table it to the next meeting, we could fill it with counselor seats, or you could designate me to be at large.
I have one at-large person that there's much interest. Besides that, would council like to at least fill the council seats for now? Yes? Okay, so Jason, I'll take that as a motion to fill the council seats.
Okay, sure.
All right, so Jason moves it. Do you want to second that? Or, okay. Oliver seconds. So who would like to fill the council seats on the subcommittee the purpose of the subcommittee is to, just so everyone knows, it's reviewing the cost to benefit ratio of being a member of the external advocacy organization, whether or not the advocacy organization fits within our principles as an organization, whether the cost financially and non-financially is warranted based on the results, and whether they're policy and research driven. So there's a whole procedure that dictates how the committee is supposed to operate within and what they're supposed to look at, but you'll be exploring the effectiveness of the organization. Is there anyone who'd like to fill that role? Okay. So Thompson has self-nominated for one of the council seats. Is there another nominee? I nominate, okay, Jason.
No, I wasn't. What? Go ahead.
I was going to nominate Alex. If you,
I'll decline that nomination. Thank you.
anyone else? One council
So
seat.
you guys saw something on it.
Sorry?
What I saw,
You're the representative for UCRU, right?
yeah.
I don't know, this really goes to you, Matt, because it's not against procedure,
Yeah.
so I can't leave it out of order, but It's what, if you feel it's appropriate, then I'll allow it to go forward.
I think this is a situation in which we would prefer having somebody with an at-large society seat as to actually an at-large seat.
Well, why don't we let EAC fill the remaining seat then, if they want to.
It makes more sense.
So Thompson will get one of them, we'll let EAC fill the other one, unless someone really wants the seat right now. No? And then I'll nominate Connor Plant for one of the at-large seats, because he expressed interest.
So are we confirming those two, or?
We'll confirm Thompson and Connor, and then we'll allow the rest of the seats to be filled by EAC. Does that sound satisfactory, gentlemen?
Sorry.
Yes?
I thought we weren't filling the at-large seats. Are we?
Well, you're filling one of the at-large seats.
Oh, okay. No, because I had someone who...
Okay, if you'd like to nominate someone.
Okay, and her name was Masha Samuels.
Sorry, we have to get on minutes. So just-
Masha Samuels. She has a legal name, but I'm not actually fully sure. So I can throw that to you guys later.
Sure, if you message it to me or Christopher, that'd be great. Okay, so the motion will now be it resolved, council elects Thompson Tran to the council seat, and as well as appoints Connor Plant and
Masha Samuels.
Matra Samuel to the at-large seats, and leaves the remainder of the seats to be appointed by the EAC.
And as a note, I'll put an email out to EAC so they can send us the numbers.
Sure. Yeah, I think having a society member on would probably be a good idea. All right, so Jason, you still want to be the mover to this?
Sure.
Okay, and Oliver, you still want to be the secretary? Okay, so there's a motion to elect Thompson, Connor, and Matras, Masha, to the subcommittee, and leave the rest of the seats to be appointed by EAC. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed to the motion? Are there abstentions to the motion? Okay, this motion passes unanimously. Okay. Did anyone there want to be part of it, by the way?
I just asked him.
Okay. Oliver Campbell. Okay, so then.
You know what? It might make more sense for me to put this call here as well, and then so everybody can see it.
Just let the people on the call know that
They're-
they're on screen.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move to general orders. The first general order is for the first reading of the mental health policy introduced by Alexander Ayer, and that's be it resolved, council gives leave to introduce the first reading of the mental health policy, and be it further resolved that council refers the policy and records of first reading to the Policies and Procedures Committee. So Alex is the mover for this. Is there a seconder? Thompson? All right. So the floor is open for debate on the policy. So if you can scroll to the policy maybe?
Yes. I'm just trying to.
1 second, Alex. We just want to get it on the screen first.
Come on.
Just put, they don't need to be on the screen. We'll put the minutes full. Or we'll just do that.
Come on. Just maybe smaller. There we go. All right. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
And the page you need to go to in the agenda package is 34. Okay, so, Alex, go ahead.
Hey, so I'll just start with a high-level overview of what this policy is. Basically, the writing this started last March after the unfortunate suicide of one of the students here at Waterloo. And it's been worked on by a couple of current and former counselors, namely myself, former counselor Nipta Yuhari. Senate has done a lot of work on this too. Many engineering counselors have given us some input. NGSOC has also given some input. And right now, this isn't a complete final policy. There still are some things we'd like to change a little bit, but it is a first draft. So this policy has 4 main pillars to support mental health here at Waterloo. The first is to empower the Campus Life Advisory Committee with being responsible for promoting student mental health on campus. And this would basically give them the power to continually review what it's doing and what impact it has on student life, and just overall promoting a positive school environment. The next pillar is mental health training. the President's Advisory Council Student Mental Health Report, which came out around the same time that we started writing this document. For recommendation number 17, it prescribes extending opportunities, encouraging faculty and staff to be trained in mental health training. So what that means is being able to recognize if someone is depressed or suicidal and being able to understand how to reach out to them and how to give them the support they need and connect them with resources they need. This has been done at a couple of other organizations, and if you read the definitions, we talk about which specific mental health training programs we'd like to see. But the most important thing in this is for the Federation of Students to train its full-time employees who interact with students with a program called QPR training, which is about 1 hour, 15 minutes. It's called Question, Persuade, Refer. And it basically is a way for people to recognize depression and suicide and get them to the resources they need. Next, the third pillar is counseling services. And this is probably going to be the pillar that we're going to change the most in the Policies and Procedures Committee, because there are a couple of different ideas on how best to approach the counseling services issue. Currently, this is addressing PAC SMH report recommendation number 27, which is increasing the number of wellness support workers to 1 counselor/psychologist for every 1,000 students, and eliminating the backlog for psychological assessments. So this is mainly an advocacy goal, where the Federation of Students would advocate to the university to fulfill what the PAC SMH report recommended, hiring crisis support workers, as well as new counselors, and report to council on the progress that's been made in achieving those new hiring goals. Pardon me?
I just wanted to see if this was wrapping up, if there were some other questions. Good.
Okay, the last, sorry if this is taking a while, by the way, I just wanted to get through a high-level overview. The last pillar is advertisement of mental health services, because unfortunately the vast majority of students don't know what services are offered here on campus. So this is just a way for feds to advertise what is available so students can get help if they need it. And that's it.
Are there other comments, questions, or concerns from council? Jared, go ahead.
Question, is QPR a training program that's available for everyone?
Yes. This policy prescribes it to staff of the Federation of Students who interact with youth. But perhaps one thing that we could do when we review it in PPC is make it available to general students too. Also, one of the things that's similar to QPR is MHFA Basic, Mental Health First Aid Basic, which is a training program that's offered by the university that anyone can sign up for. And in this policy, we advocate to the university that they expand that program so more students can get that training should they choose to.
Is that an in-person training, Thomas?
Yes, I believe so. It states in the definitions more details about it.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Matthew?
Yeah, so just a quick comment. I'm gonna support this for being a first reading. There are some things that I've had discussions with Savannah about where she sees possibilities for revision or further discussion. I think Richard's going to speak to those a little bit in a minute. But I'd recommend that council, when we pass this, also let Savannah sit as a resource member on PPC for the purposes of discussion of this policy.
Yeah, so just to be clear, first reading is not an outright approval, it's approval of the goals that are outlined, or council can add new goals to the policy, or get rid of goals it doesn't like, and then sends those goals and solutions that it wants or problems that it sees to PPC, and then PPC flushes out a full formal policy that comes back to council for second reading and approval. Okay, are there details from Savannah?
Yes, so she unfortunately couldn't be here today, but
Just speak up a little bit.
yeah, but I would just like to speak, she gave me some notes, so I'd like to speak for her on some of the things that she has said. So while this is something that is very important to me, I think that I think that we do need change, and I think that we do need more support. But from my personal level, I think that what we are lacking is not necessarily more resources in crisis management, but more resources before that. Before a person hits a crisis, there are multiple things that can happen to them that can decrease their resiliency, that eventually pushes them into crisis. And I think that we can put a lot more effort in, and it might be a little bit more efficient to go support people before they hit that point. Savannah specifically brought up the fact that this may be out of scope specifically with reference to CLAC, that it might be a little bit out of scope to empower CLAC to evaluate existing mental health programs, establish new programs, just because I sit on the committee for student mental health, which is basically the implementation committee, and we're already we've already started the process of doing all of that. I can say that even though Katie and I are pretty much the only undergraduate reps on that committee, we have a pretty powerful voice on there. I know that they really do respect what we say on it, and they take everything that we do say.
Richard, if I may, what are the long-term plans for that committee? Is there going to be a permanent committee, like a standing committee of the Senate, or does the committee go away as soon as the recommendations are implemented? Because I think that's where Alex was hitting, was what do you do when the committee is no longer there to see to the implementation and develop metrics for evaluating implementation success? And that's what I think Alex is trying to get up with. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Do you have something to say about that, actually?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for those remarks. We're definitely looking forward to optimizing this policy in a committee. To touch on your first point about helping out students before they reach that breaking point, that is something that's touched a little bit on here, but could definitely be expanded. PAC SMH report recommendation number 20 advocates for the university to develop a campus-wide training program in resiliency. And in clause number 3, it says the Federation of Students will work with the university to gauge the feasibility of offering resiliency seminars. And, sorry, were you saying something?
Yeah, so from my understanding, those seminars actually do exist. I have personally heard about a couple of them, and they've been around for at least 2 or 3 years now. As to whether they're advertised or not, I think that might be an issue. But to touch on the advertising point as well, I think it might be more fruitful for us to go to counseling services and go to health services and say, hey, like, yes, we can help you advertise, but I don't think that we should be the only body advertising, because at the end of the day, it is still a service that is under their jurisdiction, and we'll certainly help you. But I think that we both have to work together on this.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Also, to address your earlier point about CLAC, in this policy, CLAC is more focused on the Federation of Students side of things rather than the university side of things, which of course you and Katie are doing a great job at. We did have a discussion earlier between Seneca, myself, and Nikta about whether it'd be optimal to empower CLAC to do this, or to make a whole new committee on how the Federation of Students, rather than the university, should deal with mental health.
So I can speak to that quickly. The initial proposal was to create an independent standing committee for the Federation on mental wellness. The only problem there is last year our goal as a council was to consolidate committees to make them more effective, make them a little bit bigger so that there can be more voices in the room and being part of these discussions. And our kind of test case for that was the Education Advisory Committee under Matthew. And that was really successful, kind of combining 2 or 3 committees into one more functional committee works better. And so we've expanded CLAC now, having it cover some additional responsibilities wouldn't be a bad thing. And nominally, CLAC is supposed to cover campus wellness and campus life. And campus life and campus wellness includes mental health and mental wellness. That was my thinking along those lines, rather than create a brand new committee. But again, I'm not Savannah, I'm not the expert in student life portfolios.
And I also have just a couple of comments left that she also shared. With reference to one of the statements in here that say that that there is a backlog. Not that we're disagreeing with it, we just like to see some of the research conducted behind it, and to see some of the data where this is pulling from. As well, so that goes for the resilience workshop, the backlog as well, and also the current crisis support processes that are in place. That might be useful to just inform the discussion of everything. And as well, she also wrote that creating mental health advocacy priorities is reasonable, but asking CLAC to evaluate existing programs is unreasonable with the changes to CLAC as mandated by policy, because they already have a lot of responsibility as it is. So speaking to actually Seneca's point about consolidating committees, it almost sounds like to me that this is just a preliminary thought, though, that this might be an issue big enough to warrant its own.
Yeah, that's like very much up to kind of this body to figure it out.
Yeah.
My only suggestion was we expanded from Education Advisory Committee and Government Affairs and Academics Committee into Education Advisory Council, and so it's a bigger body. You can have more vast discussions, and you can break up into like working groups that can solve different problems. That's what we did for education portfolio. I don't know if that makes sense for student life portfolio. It's very that kind of needs to be a conversation we have with Savannah, I think.
And then
One second.
And just I know you have one more comment, but on this entire discussion, I just want to note that it's not something that we need to decide right now.
This is just a first reading.
I think Savannah not being here kind of hampers our ability to have extended discussions on this, because we're trying to speak for her, but I don't want to put words in her mouth. But we're sending this to CLAC for review. We can have further discussions on whether an independent committee would be good there, or other things we can do with Savannah's more important details.
Alex, and then we'll go back to it.
I suggest we add to this motion that we appoint Savannah and in a temporary capacity to PPC for the duration that we are looking at this policy.
So we actually don't need to do that
We don't need to do
because procedure around policies that PPC operates under is the people who drafted the policy. Well, I guess Savannah didn't draft the policy, so sure, we maybe want to actually. You and Nixon, whoever else drafted it will be included, but Savannah wouldn't ordinarily. So then a motion to add Savannah as a pro tempore member of PPC for the discussion involving this policy.
Yes, and with CLAC, as you were saying before, I'm more than open to creating a whole new committee, and I think there was a lot of discussion about whether CLAC or a new committee should take charge of this issue. And there's certainly both pros and cons of both. And I don't think anyone is adamant that it needs to be rather than a new committee.
I might suggest that it be like a subcommittee, the same way we do reviews for the external advocacy organizations, is that a subcommittee of the actual committee takes that on and kind of explores it in more depth. Because then you get people who are very interested in this field, but also particularly mental health. I don't know. That's something we really should discuss when Savannah's here. Did she have another point?
Yeah, just generally the point that policies, in order for them to be relevant down the road as well, I think we all share this, is that they should be a little bit more broad and less focused on the procedure. That's all I wanted to say as well. Oh, and then I wanted to answer your question with respect to the COSMH, that specific committee, whether it's a standing committee. I believe currently we're just looking into the implementation of them, but it's going to take a long time. So,
The idea is the current committees last at least 2 years to
Yeah.
follow through things. Like they're developing a timeline, but it's like not going to disappear tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Bilal? Yeah. So when I read through this policy, it seems like it's handpicking a bunch of recommendations and all, and that's important, like hammering down the important details from the finance committee report. But there's quite a bit of overlap with that implementation committee that Richard was talking about. So is there any discussion around having some sort of mechanism for a plaque or whatever that new committee that you're talking about is to see how that implementation committee is progressing on these same recommendations?
So to have, just to understand your point here, to have the Fed side provide like a long-term strategy goal for where we're headed with this? Is that, because I understood those kind of the, or like to judge the effectiveness of their implementation, or what do you mean?
I was thinking about it more from a perspective of being able to judge the implementation committee and keep that accountable, since there's a shortage of undergraduate students there for the work.
I was actually going to say, I think overall, because there are already undergraduates sitting on, like, we are undergraduates sitting on there, that there might be a mechanism to inform us of what we should also say in addition to what we have, like our own thoughts are.
So particularly with Richard, we can't force people to say or do anything, but we can, Richard serves at the pleasure of the board of directors and the pleasure of council. The executives execute the will of these bodies between regular meetings. So you can put procedural or like required hurdles in place that says exactly Richard must bring these points up at committee, Richard must report on the proceedings of the committee to council, etc. like that. So you can keep Richard the committee accountable through Richard if you wish. That is something you can do. I don't know. Alex can probably speak a little bit more to why this policy is recommendations. I think it's kind of creating a vision of mental health in the Federation of Students. Yes, Alex.
Yeah, so to respond to that, the main goal of this policy isn't necessarily to step on the toes of the university, although we do have some very clear advocacy goals of what the authors thought was the most important recommendations. But the main focus of this policy is what the Federation of Students itself can do. So not every PAC SMH recommendation was directly linked to what the Federation of Students can do. Often it was what the university could do, and when something was very important there, we put it as an advocacy goal. But this is mainly focusing on what we could do as feds to support the recommendations and to support mental wellness.
Okay. Lenny?
Yeah, slightly,
Let's just speak up a little bit, Lenny. Some people on camera.
So yeah, I agree with the first reading and the principles. There are a number of specific clauses that pinpoint specific PAC recommendations, and as you just said, there are only some specific items that FEDS can do. Is it better to lobby for the implementation of all of these recommendations instead of saying we want recommendation number 27 or number 14?
That's certainly something we can discuss. I was more looking at what specifically was most important, because there certainly are recommendations that need to be implemented more than others. But if that's something you really care about, we can certainly discuss consolidating that into just implement the entirety of the PAC SMH recommendations as an advocacy goal.
Okay, so we've kind of been circulating on this a little bit. So as I understand it, there's an amended motion on the floor so the motion from Alex was to create a pro tempore seat for Savannah Richardson on PPC for fleshing out of this policy. So if we can vote on that motion first, and then proceed if there's any other comments, and then move on to debate. Otherwise, I'm going to call this a further vote. So do we have a second? Matt seconds the motion to appoint Savannah pro tempore to the committee. All right. Is there any opposition? Okay. All those in favor? Any abstentions? I think it's unanimous. All right, so that motion carries. So now the main motion reads, resolve council gives leave for the introduction of the first reading, refers the policy and records of first reading to Policies and Procedures Committee, and appoints Savannah Richardson pro tempore to the committee for the duration of policy implementation. I would also say that if you could pass to Savannah, I think her notes should be passed on to PPC as well. Or if she's there, she can discuss it. Are there any other points for the main motion before we? Okay. Is there opposition to first reading? All right. So then, Alex is the mover. Is there a second for the main motion for first reading? All right. We'll take Lenny. All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The motion carries. It'll be referred to PPC and we'll have a second reading hopefully in the coming months. Okay, so the next agenda item is be it resolved, council approves the value for money policy and tasks the Policy and Procedures Committee to make such procedural amendments for policy compliance. Moved by Alex Heyer. Do we have a second for today? Oliver Campbell. All right, so the motion on the floor. Other comments? Alex.
So this is a policy that was co-authored by both me and Seneca after talking to a couple of board members about why it's really important to have a high-level vision of how feds should properly spend its money and properly evaluate the value of everything it spends money on. So I'm just going to go over a brief overview of what's in this policy. So a lot of this is what Feds believes in. So we start off with, we believe that Feds should be able to demonstrate superior value for money of any purchase compared to other options. We believe that there should be a mechanism that for ongoing expenses, that should be reviewed every 5 years to make sure that is the best option for the Federation of Students. We will be creating documentation to describe the nature of contractual expenses, so we could go back and look at what expenses are taking place, and in the future, if we think we need to review that, we could have documentation to look back on. And we're going to be telling the board of directors to continually consider when it makes new purchases effectiveness, efficiency, and economy when considering what to do. And we empower the board of directors to develop operating procedures along these goals. We also task students, council, and committees to maximize value for money in the regular assessment of student-run services. So that's both council and committees should always take into consideration value for money when looking at anything that contains expense. So back to the high level, this is mainly saying that we just believe that Feds should consider, really needs to consider how student money is being spent, because we do have an obligation to our students to make sure the money we get from them in fees is spent wisely. I'd like to yield my time to Seneca, because I know he has a lot to say about it too.
So just a quick point here for conflict of interest. I am currently on the board of directors. This policy was written prior to being a board member. My opinion, the opinion I express is not my opinion as chair of the board, it is my opinion as a counselor. I think this policy balances demands for evidencing value for money, but leaves most of the procedural implementation in the hands of the board of directors where it belongs. I think it strikes proper balance between what is reasonable for this body to demand and what is reasonable for the board of directors to execute. And I do not believe, as a director, I do not believe that it puts an undue burden on the board in terms of that cost. When I say this, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. The board has not considered this. This was something that was drafted prior to me being on the board of directors.
Point of clarification, when was this
Uh, Winter 2018.
by
Month?
No.
I don't know what month. Before the end of the term, winter 2018. Okay. Comments, concerns, questions on the policy? Yes, Jason.
Just general question. Since I know the UPass agreement would be up for renewal in a year, is this policy, would this policy impact how that proceeds?
Sorry. So I'm going to speak on this matter personally and not as a director. The policy is evaluated, it requires evaluation every 5 years for the demonstration of value for money in these proceedings and ongoing contractual expenses. So UPass is not yet an ongoing contractual expense. The new UPass agreement is not yet an ongoing contractual expense. And it is my firm belief, having sat on council last year and listened to Brian and Antonio and Andrew talk about UPass negotiations, and since then Kurt and Richard and Matt, I do think that it's that negotiations and agreements being fleshed out properly represent what's best for students, and I do not believe these individuals would act in any way that would contravene that. I also don't think this policy puts an undue burden on that implementation, and I don't think costs anything. The only burden on implementation that this would put is that it would require summary documentation of the agreement to be put forward to students that isn't just the actual contract for students to read, but a summary of what the agreement is. So that in my opinion is the only burden that it puts on the board of directors in consideration of this contract. Please keep in mind the board of directors has power to approve contracts. So we are not the evaluator of what is value for money. We set a policy like this, and board of directors evaluates what it believes the value for money of its operations is. So we just set the guidelines so within we build a sandbox within the play. Oliver?
I'd just like to say that I think this policy is a great idea. As a student that pays these two beds, it'd be great to know where my money is going. I just have a question. Will first of all, will the results of our findings or the findings of the board be published to the general public so they see how their money is being spent? And if there are efficiencies to be found, that those decisions on what changes are to be made will be by the board of directors, correct?
So, two-part to that. Identification of efficiencies falls to the board. In the policy, as it should, because the board's right is contractual expenses, or is contracts, period, and expenses. So, yes, the kind of implicit is that if efficiencies are to be found, the board should act on them. That's an implication of the policy. It's not explicit, but it would be, in my opinion, it would contravene the theme of the policy and the spirit of the policy to identify an efficiency that could be met and fail to meet it without good reason. I don't think that needs to be put in explicitly. And then the second part of your question was, will they be made public? I'd say that question for the next policy on freedom of information. That one was presented to the board and discussed. And I wrote that one myself. I can speak to that in more detail. Are there other comments? Katie?
So is this, I don't have a lot of background on the budget policy of feds. Is this amending something that was pre-existing or creating something brand new?
This is something brand new. We don't have policy currently delineating budgetary or financial expectations. We have procedure that does it, but in terms of what policy art is to the corporation, policy is the lens through which the board of directors must interpret the governing documents and must take their actions. So if a series of actions are available to the board must take their actions under the lens or the constraints put on by the policies. So if we have a policy that says ethical contract, that we must be fair trade, then the board, if there's two options, the board must seek the fair trade option, unless there's substantial cost to doing so that would make it untenable. Yes.
So I'd have to say, like, this policy seems to make a lot of sense, especially from like a historical standpoint, because then all the decisions will be documented. Just to like further understand, will like previous year's records be kept, or
Can you?
like so I'm guessing each year these when the policy decision, when a contractual decision is made, there'd be like a summary of why that decision was done.
That's correct. I believe.
Will that be like documented from previous years as well?
Oh, we'll
Like will the
ex post
records be
facto?
kept?
So no, we can't pass ex post facto.
Oh, no, sorry, I mean, like, for each year, will records be kept on, like, the previous years, or will they, like, kind of be lost?
Matt, what did you speak?
Because when you're talking about stuff going forward, I assume that anything that we're doing going forward would be posted on the board SharePoint site posterity. Okay.
And the summary documentation that would be available to inform the general membership, I don't think that would be going anywhere so long as the contract exists. If the contract ceases to exist, then there's not much need for a summary for something that no longer exists.
Okay.
Are there other comments? Yes, Kate.
So you're creating a process to define the budget that previously not existed before. And
No.
So
The process for the budget exists. That's the budget procedure. This isn't the budget.
This is the budget and review committee that you're creating.
No. This is the value for money policy.
I'm missing an element.
Scroll down page 37.
38, 37, 37.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just to clarify some things, because perhaps there's a little bit of confusion. This isn't creating a new committee, and this isn't necessarily changing budget procedures. This is saying this is how the budget procedures should be approached, and this is saying that this is what the Federation of Students believes in when it comes to budgets, as well as the new documentation, which is one of the action items we have.
I'm going to make a further clarification, just from how I read the policy, and so maybe correct me if I'm wrong. This isn't so much policy with regard to budgets as it is for contractual obligations and large purchases. So it's
Yes,
it's
large
not something
ongoing expenses and operating costs.
It would not be something that's attached to the budget or in budget committee. It would be if we were we were talking about who our auditor is, then it would say that we have to have an RFP process that's consistent with this.
Yeah, and so those definitions, what RFP is and things like that are defined at the top of the policy. The main things, if you're referencing budget, the closest thing to that is that when we go into consideration of financial expenses, the lens through which we should be doing those is there value for money in the expense for students that justifies the expense? And that includes the provision of services. Are there other comments? Or are we doing a dead horse? Yes, Christian.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that students know and can have a voice in where their money is being spent. So I think it's like a policy that should be passed.
Okay. Are there any other comments? No? All right. Then Alex will be the mover. Is there a second? All right, Oliver. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, do you want to note it? No, one abstention. Okay. So the next agenda item is be it resolved, Council approves the Freedom of Information and Secrecy in Corporate Governance policy, and be it further resolved, the Council tasks the Board of Directors to develop, in consultation with Council, mechanisms for Freedom of Information requests for information not immediately publicly available to the membership, including but not limited to a website request form. So I'm on record moving this. Is there a second? Jason? All right. So would anyone like to speak before I introduce the policy? No? So this policy was sent to the Board of Directors for consideration before I brought it here. I wanted to make sure that what was being included was consistent with operational considerations as well as the strategy of the organization, making sure that we really are making information that we have accessible to students and making it easy for students to understand. The other thing is policy. So this policy sets some strategic beliefs of the organization in open, democratic, and transparent decision making. It sets the expectation for unfettered and equal access to information. It then walks that back a little bit for certain types of information. So notably, information that pertains to, that would violate right to privacy under the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, RSO 1990, and would violate human resources policy, or would harm information that's compiled for contractual purposes doesn't need to be made public, but only to the extent that the production of those records would interfere with negotiation proceedings or would disclose techniques, procedures, or critical information that would limit the negotiating capability of the Federation now and in the future. It requires that the Federation respond to a request within 2 days, but comply with the request in a timely manner. So the response is, yes, we acknowledge that we've received your request. The complying is, we will get you the information if we can get it to you within these limitations, as we are in a timely manner, as soon as is reasonable. And that the procedures around what the criteria for confidential restrictions is defined by the board, and the reason that needs to be done is because the board of directors considers substantial amounts of confidential information, so that would affect the business operations of the organization. It also requires that things made publicly available or voted on by council or the board that are public matters get put online within, I believe, 3 days, 72 hours? Yeah, okay. So within 3 business days after they're decided. And this stems from things sometimes not getting online in an expedient manner. It also establishes a mechanism for arbitration of concerns, so that if student council receives complaints or feels that Feds has arbitrarily or capriciously acted with withholding information, then a joint committee of the officers of council and the officers of board will decide whether or not that information was withheld within reason, so within the criteria established by the board of directors and established by pursuant to this policy. And it also just requires that plans, charters, policies, etc. are made publicly available to the membership. And that we strive to provide reasonable opportunities for public review and commentary for major decisions that are likely to impact undergraduates. So, Alex.
Overall, I think this is an awesome policy and I'll be supporting it. I just have one question based on some of the issues that were brought up last term in council. Because last term there was a group of councillors that were concerned about previous year's council meeting minutes. And I believe it was decided that some of those would be removed. Is that going to affect what happened then to deal with the meeting minutes that were inaccurate?
So council last year tasked the board of directors to implement a decision on their behalf with regard to that. And that's something that the board is still debating. I believe in the meantime the minutes have been removed. I'm not positive.
I don't.
Okay, so I can't speak on behalf of that as to whether or not they've been removed, but that's something the board is still considering.
But is that attached to this policy at all, or is there no?
They're separate orders, so this would be going forward.
So this isn't going to affect that.
We can't pass policy that ex post facto penalizes the institution or people here for things that happened in the past. We can only fix the way we do things in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Richard?
So I'd just like to speak on the policy. I think that, I fully agree with the spirit of this policy. Transparency and crucially communication is vital and crucial to the life of any sort of anything really. Communication is extremely important. I would just like to, before I continue, has this, when was this drafted and has this gone through any sort of, other than board, has this gone through any consultation mechanism?
So in terms of student outreach?
Not necessarily student outreach, but just with...
Yeah, so I've spoken, so I sent it to, I spoke to members, a couple members of the exec board about it. I spoke to Suzanne about some of the operational costs for doing something like this, and made it fairly clear that this wasn't designed to establish a formal, you must submit a freedom of information request if you want something. It's like, if you get a request for information, how does Fed handle it, and what are the expectations, what should and should not be confidential? Because there's quite a bit of information that we deal with that is delineated one way or another, and we should have fairly clear policy standpoints on what constitutes confidential information. So, and then in terms of other outreach, I sent this for consultation with 4 or 5 counselors, in addition to the board at large and discussion.
Before I comment on, let me comment and then I'll say what I have to say afterwards. I would like to just go over some of the wording of this policy, and essentially similar to the mental health policy, I was wondering if it would be better to move it to PPC for review and to flesh out the rest of this, and these are sort of the reasons why I say that. Currently, as it is written, the policy seems to be corporate-wide, and so it makes almost more sense for it to be a board item, not necessarily a council item. The policy acknowledges HR, and it acknowledges confidential proceedings, but there are certainly some scenarios in which it might be important for executive to restrict information. And certainly I don't think that a lot of, there are some things in there that haven't been defined. For example, like what should be public information. Public information is, there are a lot of different nuances to what public information can be and what it should and shouldn't. And I think that warrants a discussion as well. And more simply, I think that in order to make it a little bit more accessible and transparent, I think that, and not to say that it's a fault in any way, I just think that some of the language should be more plain and should be pared down a little bit more.
Lenny?
So I just want to say I agree with the sentiment behind the proposal.
You got to speak up a little bit.
I agree with the sentiment behind the proposal, but I was looking for maybe a bit more clarification about one of the further thought process. Sure. It says that Federation will comply with any and all solicitations. So solicitations, does that refer to a formal legal request, FOI, freedom of information request, or can it just be like a non-legal, just an email?
For most purposes, communication, requesting information, if you don't have an established what an FOI is, then any request for information is considered a solicitation for information, unless defined otherwise in the procedure. So nowhere here does it define that it must go through a form or it must go through this particular staff member on these particular days of the week. A request for any and all information or requests received by the Federation that are pursuant to this policy and comply with procedures to be developed by the board. So the procedures on what should and shouldn't be confidential is to be determined by the board of directors. There's a be it resolved clause with enumerated points. I believe point 1 says exceptions from public decision making should be those specifically authorized under criteria established by the board of directors.
Well, and when the Federation of Students receives a freedom of information request, does the Federation of Students charge the applicant some monetary fee?
No. We charge membership fees by being a member of FEDS already. There's nothing we can't pass a policy saying every member will pay an additional $5. There's very clear criteria under which fee changes occur.
I just wanted to.
And we can't offload costs of something like this to the membership other than through membership fees that already exist.
So when a member makes such a request, they don't have to pay. That specific member doesn't have to.
If you asked me for information on what room your council was meeting in, and I maybe paid me $1 for that information, would that be fair?
The university has these you make a FOI.
That's not in the policy, so the conclusion that I would come to is no, if I were a chip to Dion, and then is there a hand over here? Matt? So Dion.
Yeah, I'd like to amend the motion.
Okay, so there's a motion to amend. Will you send that information to Richard to put on the screen and to Christopher to put in the minutes?
And I just wanted to make a note for me, if that's all right.
Sure. Do you mind?
Yeah, and the note is that, so everyone knows, we don't fall under BIPA or MBIPA. We're not subject to any specific legislation, so it's not like formal outside freedom of information request. Anything that would occur would have to go through how board develops it.
Yeah. And so it would just be, if board says, yeah, if someone shoots us an email and says, I want to have access to Kurt's action plan, then board's like, all right, does that count as confidential information? Right? Yes, no? Done. Yeah, it's already on the website. But something like that, right? Or is it like if someone goes to the main office and says, hey, I want the Federation charter because I couldn't find it on the website, like something like that, right? Like,
I've added it to the Google Hangout just so everybody can see.
That's,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
can we open Word?
Yes. I just thought that they need to see as well. You know what, I'm going to save this and then send this off so that they can see these meetings. Can I send files over there?
I don't know if you can. All right, well, we've been adjourned for 2 hours. In the meantime, while we figure this out, people can...
You've been in session for 2 hours?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Well,
Okay.
would people like to take a 5-minute break?
Should I move to recess?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
If you'd like cupcakes, take cupcakes.
Yeah.
There's also
Okay,
some-
so I'm going to take a privilege motion, and I'm going to assume a privilege motion to take a 5-minute recess unless there's objection. That way we can figure out technically we're going to send these amendments, and then we'll reconvene to discuss this policy then. Okay? All right, we're recessed. Be back at 2:05, please. We're supposed to do it. Just send out the text.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Also send us all the amendments at once, and then you can break them separately as we go. So you can cluster them anywhere you want, just all of them at once.
So it's not, that's not.
I think this is really everything anyway. Policies and procedures can be relevant.
Oh, I see. Cupcakes.
these are the conjugation ones. That's why it's purple, because engineering had good conjugation labs. So wait, your name is? Jerry.
My name There's more.
For our purposes, we're not.
Well, thank engineering for over-ordering.
Oh, you're the only one. I was wondering. Because,
Yeah.
Last time there was like only one That's Matt Council, and it's just Dion. And no one's like, whoa, no, everyone can both know Dion.
Yeah, well, Dion dragged both of us here. And then it's Matt. And then the other spots are also. We're a full space for the first.
So you're like a math counselor?
No, I didn't. It was written. Yeah, I always represent anyone sense. I've never represented anyone. That's part of it.
More people that have you seen I saw it. It's actually
So it's funny, it makes sense. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. If they can collect second base and do some of that,
Well, Max sets record on
be useful.
I think part of it is that Max is not very like a lot of masters are like, well, what is Max? But also like a lot of like there's a strong culture that people stand on their own foot and they don't need support of these organizations kind of thing. So they don't see the point of it. Like I see that more in me. Yeah, and just like
You guys do have the match news, is that still being published?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's funny because Math News is an older source edition.
yeah. Oh, are you gonna talk about it?
Oh, the funding?
The funding.
Because it's older campus and because no one knows who funds Math News. And I was talking to the Math News index. If you can call it, you can kind of show up and stuff once in a while. And they're like, we get money from the school, and everybody thinks that Math News is 25%. And even the execs thought it was like, hey, this doesn't track every month. So the students go with math stuff, right? So done documentation years ago, like paper and social email back then. Apparently it turns out like Math News. Oh, but like the person that set up the our lab our lab school, so the money just goes to Math News. But no one knows like it's
that's really interesting.
So they're just getting free money.
From where?
From Math.
That is
Yeah.
$2,000.
But the faculty doesn't know that this is happening, and so they deny it. So
it's just that I just feel like I agree with you, but it's just
I haven't read that yet. I'm guessing it doesn't functionally change cheaper.
That is more like SLAs and stuff.
I just like, I think the spirit of it is fine with what we've been doing.
I think for sure I want to make sure that
One trash can. Last year, funding that was a bad. I looked up that.
So I just didn't check.
So you understand what I said? In the policy today, average now is a first read. Well, it's already up there on the agenda. So it's just that all of the motions stand. This is I haven't seen that level. I trust them to have made a good judgment, so it's and hopefully
It's funny, yeah. I think we want to I think 7 people went for nominations, but then not enough people got the signatures, so everyone was complaining.
That's right, yeah. When I ran,
No.
you were running that?
Yeah, it's kind of like, signatures are a barrier.
It's like very
Bad. I went to a lab and it's like, hey, this is engineering.
Oh, yeah, it's on July 8th.
Hey, I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna be here July 8th.
it's really
hopefully.
This is like an
Did you do it online? That's not so awkward, but turn that on my shoe face.
The online site is that.
Yeah, it's great, but you don't have to actually go in person.
I lost my form like a couple of days before, and then I was okay to take a picture of it. So like they no one like
Alright guys, please take your seats, we're gonna reconvene. If it can't be sent to people on teleconference, then I guess send it out by the council mailing list. In either way, we have enough people here for quorum to make the decision by the people assembled here by themselves. I prefer if it goes to everybody, but in the interests of timely decision making.
Oh, you can't be too. That's lame. Can everybody see?
Did you send it to me as well?
Yeah, we can do these one at a time. I think that's easier.
Can we see? Can you see?
make the color like actually black?
It's not black.
It is black. Make it bold. Make it bold. Make it bold. There we go. Now people can see it.
Okay, hold on.
Can people read it back there? Akshay, can you read it? Or do you need a bigger font? Okay, let's go up to 18.
Let's do a block font. Let's do.
Career new. Yes. Plus.
I actually might keep this. I actually might keep this.
No.
No?
Zoom back in.
But you can't then again. Oh,
No, that's a little too much there. Perfect. No, not less perfect.
I can't see the button.
Perfect.
Okay, leave it.
Can you see that?
No.
All right, why don't we up the fonts to 18 instead of 60?
Did you change it to one page?
Yeah, can we
put
line breaks in
Good?
between?
Okay.
Oh, no, like maybe put out one page rather than 2 pages.
Because if I do one page.
No,
I know.
I mean by zooming.
All right, you know what? I just wanted everybody to see everything.
Go to view and change.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we can scroll down.
All right, so scroll up. So just for the record, we are reconvened now. So,
Wait, hold on. Give me 1 second, sorry.
okay, we are no longer reconvened.
I wanted to send this to the others.
Okay, well, in the meantime, guys, who's excited for the next World Cup match?
What's next?
Do we need to approve? I think it'd be Brazil and Switzerland.
Yeah, that's right. Here's Switzerland.
I'm not caring.
What's on Tuesday?
That's fixed.
I think Tuesday is the last year. I think England's good.
Guys, the Germany away jersey looks so beautiful. That teal color.
Oh,
Oh, it's such a beautiful jersey. Watch. Surprise upset. So well, did you see how fast it is?
yeah, I was watching your
Okay, cool.
Because they were also close around the goal trying to get it in.
That played a really good counter, like I was like most of the first half. That was a really good counter.
Yeah, they really did. And then next week, just defended the hell out of the second half. Because I think 84% of the shots were by Germany.
Oh my God.
And possession was like 80% by Germany.
Yes.
So they must have been fair defense.
Yes. Today I have planned to move the last time.
Okay, we're good?
Okay, so when you put the amendments on this page,
Agenda 4 times.
full screen?
Yeah. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes in it.
Okay, guys, we are re-adjourning, or we are reconvening. I'm so sorry, man. We are
Re-adjourning sounds good.
all right, so we are on the Freedom of Information and Secrecy and Corporate Governance Policy. And there's a motion to strike Be it further resolved, the Federation will comply with any and all solicitations for information in a timely manner, save where such disclosures would breach confidentiality or contractual obligations, including but not limited to making public and accessible all procedures for request of documentation from any entity of the Federation, and further, the Federation will respond to requests for information within 2 business days to the following. For replacement with the following, be it further resolved, the Federation will respond to requests for information within 2 business days. Be it further resolved, the Federation will comply with any and all solicitations for information within 20 business days, save where such disclosures would breach confidentiality or contractual obligations, or save where the time required to determine if the Federation holds the requested information combined with the time required to collect and publish the requested information exceeds 16 hours. The Federation can combine multiple requests which are similarly themed, whether from one person or multiple people, as one request to determine the amount of time required. And be it further resolved, the Federation will make public and accessible all procedures for request of documentation from any entity of the Federation. So this splits that one clause into 3 clauses.
There's one more.
And adds a time component.
Yeah, so one more clause.
Any FLI request can't exceed 16 hours.
Is this the one?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the last
these-
clause. So there's 3 amendments here.
Okay.
But that's the last clause.
So this is the last clause says, be it further resolved, the Federation shall notify the requester of the Federation, if the Federation cannot comply with the Freedom of Information request because of the aforementioned violations of confidentiality or contractual obligations. The request taking too much time, or if the Federation will require additional time to process the Freedom of Information request. Can we, since the criteria for withholding information is set by the board, can we just say if the cannot comply with the information for the Freedom of Information request, or if they will require additional time, something like that, as opposed to listing the specific cases?
Yep.
So strike.
So cannot comply with, nope, let's strike it here.
Strike.
Because, yeah.
Yep, that's fine.
So be it resolved, the Federation shall notify the requester if the information cannot comply with the Freedom of Information request, or if the Federation will require additional time to process the information request. Okay, because the criteria for what can be withheld is set by the Board of Directors for necessary reasons. Okay, so if nobody objects to that implementation, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. I don't see any problem with those changes. Jason?
I just wanted to ask, like I can understand 2 business days was a bit rushed, but I feel like 20 is a bit much. Like, why that number?
Right. So basically the idea is that if requests are going to take a long time, is that we're limiting them to 16 hours, and the reasoning for 20 business days here is to account for a case where there was a flood of Freedom of Information requests, and staff get backlogged with requests.
Can you scroll up just a little bit? Okay, so that's good. Perhaps we can say, shall comply with any and all solicitations for information in a timely manner, not exceeding 20 business days. Because then if we can do it faster, we will, but at most it still has the cap of 20 business days. Is that friendly?
Yep, that's friendly.
Okay. In a timely manner, comma, but not more than, or not exceeding.
Oh, not exceeding, sorry.
Not exceeding 20 business days. Save where, Okay. If there's no objection to those changes, I'll accept that as friendly. There's no problem with that.
In the past,
Hold on. Is this about this motion?
Yes.
Okay.
How long would it usually take to service a request, a solicitation? Like, would it usually take?
Right now, there's no requirements for how long or how short it needs to be.
But like, when people have made solicitations, are there any records of how long it takes? Like, does it usually take?
There's no recorded procedure. There's no matter of record for when you request something, how soon someone has to get back. If you request something right now, it could take anywhere between a minute and the entire governing year, or longer.
Is 16 hours, is that like a reasonable time, or is it possible they ask questions that would take maybe 20 or 25 hours?
Similar service level agreements, I think, are on the order of about 16 to 24 hours. I don't know if maybe.
Oh, sorry.
Dion?
Yeah. So the research here concerning various government agencies and what their SLAs were with respect to servicing clearance and information requests that are free of no charge to the requester, and generally it's been around the span of around 16 to 24 hours in the area.
Richard?
And then, point of clarification, why hours and not just say, like, are these, okay, first of all, are these regular hours or business hours?
So good business hours.
We can specify that in the definition section that all hours refer to business hours.
So then why don't we just say 2 business days?
I think that'd be better. Because the only places in this policy that I defined hours were when it was not business hours. 72 hours, intentionally so because council convenes on Sundays. Yes.
I tend to like the hours metric because that breaks down a little more neatly if multiple people are involved on the same request.
Okay. So why don't we say business hours in this line here? Okay. So is that a friendly amendment? Okay. So there's a friendly amendment to add business to 16 business hours. All right. Are there other points on this motion? No? Then I'll accept this motion as friendly. We don't need to vote on it. So I accept the motion as a friendly amendment. All right. So that motion's good. Now let's move to the next one.
This is the 2 votes following.
Yes. So the first two?
The first, yeah.
Okay. Scroll it up.
Sorry. I was just,
No, not the third.
I was making sure we didn't have any more.
So these are just to add, not to strike.
Yeah, so these are adding things to allow more transparency into information requests. So yeah, so just basically to allow people, to allow us to publish FY requests and responses online, as to not have people request things that have been already requested. The second clause of this adds in publishing information of how we have fulfilled our service level agreement. So publishing how many requests we received that term, how many were fulfilled on time, how many were exempt, and how many are still being processed.
The first portion, making all requests available online. I don't immediately see a problem with that. If they're requesting information that ought to be public, do you see
It might take a long time for the website gets updated to do it. As long as it's free to redact stuff.
Yeah, there's criteria for what can be withheld is defined by the board of directors in the policy. Okay, and the Federation shall make available statistics on freedom of information requests made in previous terms, including but not limited to the number of total requests, the number of requests which did not receive a response due to exemption, the number of requests that received a response after 20 business day period, and the number of requests which are still being processed. Can I refer this clause to committee instead, and that we proceed with the amendment and have a committee consider the clause only because I don't know what the operational costs of that will be, and I think that's something we should hear from the general manager and the board of directors.
With respect to the entire amendment, first one, or
just the second part of this clause? The middle, make it the statistics one.
Okay, I'm just curious to hear why the statistics would be more costly than publishing the information and responses.
Someone has to go through and assess and talk. So the person posting would have to go through and talk to the people who process that particular request, right? If a request goes to Department A, then the IT department has to talk to person in Department A, person in Department C, person in Department E, coalesce all that information and publish those statistics. Whereas just publishing the request, as soon as the request comes in, that's something that, if it's done by a form or something, then IT can just be CC'd on the form. So that request can immediately be made public in an automated fashion.
Okay.
That's my first hunch, but I don't know. I mean, we could refer both of them to committee if you think they'd be better tied together. I think that might actually be best, but I don't know.
I think we can separate them, that's fine.
Okay. So the first one I'll take as a friendly amendment. Actually, I'll leave this up to council because I think this is something that council should decide. If you think requests should be made publicly accessible online. So we have a mover. The mover is Dion. Do we have a second for the first motion? Yucha. Okay. The matter's up for debate. Council?
So the wording says we shall make all freedom of information requests. Is that, like, I just don't know, should council provide all the requests in the seats that we could, or should council or feds be able to selectively choose which requests to?
Yeah, so in this case, I believe all requests should be made public, and even in the case where it is exempt, that exemption, the reason why it's exempt should also be made available publicly as well. The reason for this is basically so that people don't submit a request that's already been submitted, so we don't tie up federation resources.
Okay, Matthew?
Just another note I'd make is that if we choose to go down this route, another thing to take into account is whether the requester would actually want such stuff posted online.
Well, that could be a cost for trying to do a formal request as opposed to, that's why I left my policy open-ended and not being a, like, on paper, must be in writing, written request for stuff, because I wanted to make it as easy as possible for students to get information from us and not have like some sort of formal bureaucratic process to have to go through. Do you know?
Yeah, so speak to that. Last sentence of that clause is that no public information, no personal information will be published online. So for example, your name and email will not be attached to your request, and it was in the message or to be done.
Is this overly encumbering though? Does this require then that informal requests would not get responded to? If you went to the office and asked for an informal request, it seems like if it didn't go through this bureaucratic mechanism that it wouldn't get responded to. Yes?
I'll just point out that this is kind of the status quo that all requests are informal and we try to accommodate as much as possible. So I don't know if you want to, if what council wants is to set up a parallel formal and informal system or what, but I think, I don't know if, are we counting this as a first reading or did this come to council?
This came to council for approval.
Okay.
I would say, could we refer both these clauses then to Board of Directors for operational implementation?
I just think it sounds like there's a lot of discussions yet to have, at least on these particular amendments.
Oliver?
I personally like the proposal right now. I think it's a good idea to stick with the informal requests. I believe that it can cut out the middleman. Just if I can go directly to someone to request information, then that is a lot easier for both the people getting the information and requesting it as well. I see it as unnecessary work to have a formal request system that we would have to implement as well. And I'd just like to say, I think keeping it informal is the most efficient and the best way to implement this.
I'd have to say, like, with the addition of like the first paragraph of the amendment, I feel like this policy would have it would make even more sense because that would therefore stop any like repeats of asking for information. So even like in the informal situations, people wouldn't need to ask those informal questions again because they'd be able to just like refer to this publicly posted information requests.
So my only thought on that is it takes a lot of staff time and cost to student time to put all those requests online, especially if an informal request gets lodged, a staff member has to write it down and send it to IST to post online. I think that's multiple staff hours to do if we're not going for a formal mechanism.
Oh no, sorry, I meant with the formal mechanism, not with the informal mechanism. Like I said, that this attached with the formal
okay. So
policy
if the two
makes sense.
together.
Yeah, because then there wouldn't be the requirement for those informal requests because the formal one was already made and published.
Okay. As I understand, they were moved separately.
We can separate these two processes because I think there's been debate for the same thing.
Alex?
I do think is a bit of an undue burden to ensure that every freedom of information request is put online, but perhaps we could allow for whoever requests the document to also request for that to be available online as well.
What do you mean, sir?
Perhaps if you want to look at document A and you put in a freedom of information request, but you also believe that should be available online, you could also request that. So then we don't have documents that don't need to be online being online. We don't have excess work for Fed staff. But I do think that would take care of the concerns that you had over here of important documents not being online and people having, or different people asking for the same document.
I will note that there's a specific clause specifying bylaws, charters, policies, procedures, plans, contracts were not restricted by the board, and reports to the Federation of Students have to be made available online. So if there's any document that you think does not fall within from anything from bylaw to reports that are not confidential, I'm not sure what it would be, but the reason I put this up for council to decide on these is I don't see this as a friendly amendment. I think it overcomplicates the process of requesting information.
In that case, I think I'd have to agree with your statement there that this would be an undue burden on Fed staff if we already have a clause saying that all documents that should be online, like reports, are posted.
Yes.
I was thinking, what if there was like an opt-out option? So like if you didn't want that formal request to be published, you could just opt out. That would stop the additional work maybe being done by Fed's employees. And like as you said, all you have to then do is just CC it to IT.
Again, that discussion requires that we are moving towards a formalized mechanism as opposed
Yeah,
to...
sorry, again, I meant with the formal, not with the...
So we are right now debating whether or not there should be a formal mechanism because I put these clauses up for consideration to council, not as a friendly amendment. So it's an unfriendly amendment.
Yeah, sorry, so I meant that with the unfriendly amendment, if there was like an option to opt out, then maybe
if I can
it would make it easier.
offer my recommendation to you, Dion, would just be we should move that this be recommended to the board of directors and that they work with the executives on how to best implement this because there's sometimes perverse costs to making things like this happen is that by going through and making a method by which information can be requested, the perverse cost is that fewer people request information because there's now a burden to the request of information. And I want to make it as easy as possible, but also create standards for which and how information will be restricted. Right now we have no such standards. And so that's, if you'd be amenable to it, I'd rather that those ideas be sent to the board of directors for consideration as a recommendation than be a binding policy statement. But that's not my decision making.
Can we get a report back from staff in regards to the cost of setting it up?
That's Kurt's domain.
You want a report from staff?
Or just like a note on staff on what it would cost to set up, like the ability to publish reports.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's for the creation of a formalized mechanism.
Sure.
Okay, so in which case, can we
Then we can also recommend
withdraw these two motions?
Can we also recommend this to be actually, yeah, just wait for the report to come back first, and then we can look at
So you withdraw these two motions from consideration?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on the last motion. The middle two have been withdrawn from consideration. So we're thus far sticking with an informal system. Be it further resolved, Council directs Policies and Procedures Committee to draft procedural amendments to create a permanent standing committee of the officers of board and council to meet as prescribed by this policy. Do you want that in the policy, or would you just like that amending the original motion?
That's the original motion.
Okay. So let's go back to consideration. So there's a motion to amend the original motion such that PPC considers or drafts procedural amendments to create a permanent standing committee of the officers of board and council. All those in favor, is there a second to this motion? Last. Is there a second to the motion? There's no second? Eugen, all right, so there's a second. Is there any debate on the motion? Any comments on the motion? All right, is anyone in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 1, 2. Opposed to the motion? They're amending the original. They're amending the principal motion to add this. The principal motion was accepting the policy. Now the policy will be accepted, and PPC is tasked to draft procedural amendments to create an additional permanent standing committee of council, or joint committee. Yeah, All right, so there's 2 opposed, so all in favor then, let's just go from the top, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Hands high, please. Oh, sorry, so we're 7, not 8. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. That means this comes to me. All abstaining? All right, this,
It doesn't, I'm just gonna say it doesn't matter too much because it's, I voted against it because the board is probably gonna find some way that if council doesn't.
okay, so my ability to split a vote is based on what the least obstructive motion is. The least obstructive action. I don't get to vote based on my preference. It's based on the least obstructive action. The least obstructive action is to take no action, and therefore I vote against this. This motion fails. The speaker splits the time, and my vote is no. Okay, so the last motion fails. So the motion, the policy reads as it stands with the initial motion. Can I scroll up on your computer, Richard? With the initial motion having been accepted as a friendly amendment. So this was accepted as a friendly amendment, and this clause was stricken. So we're now back to the principal motion, or the policy as it is. Are there comments on the principal motion or the policy? Richard, did you have some?
Just to go back, and I just with this last, I think that there's still a lot of discussion to be done on this, and I think that it might be useful to either refer this to PPC or to table it to next week.
Are there other thoughts? Is that a formal motion or?
Sure.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion? Oliver? All right, so there's a second for the motion to refer this to PPC. All right, comments?
Matthew, just the details of this motion, are we referring to PPC to make edits and send back to council?
I expected that was the case, yeah. Okay. So yes, that's correct. Alex?
I am content with the amended policy as it is, so I'll be voting to pass this as a final policy rather than sending it to PPC.
Are there other comments? Okay, so we have a motion to not to pass the policy, but instead to refer the policy and the principal motion to Policies and Procedures Committee. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All 10. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those abstaining? 1. And how do you vote online?
Oh, they voted.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. So, with a vote of 10 to 7 to 10, 9 to 7 to 2, this motion is referred to committee. PPC will get back by the next council meeting. Okay. So the policy will be on the agenda for the next council. Fill out your schedules, please. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, I move that so just to formalize that, I would like to move that the initial agenda item and changes made by PPC is tabled until the next meeting. The principal motion.
Isn't that what we just voted?
We voted to refer the policy to PPC. I'd like to table the motion for the next meeting so that it's formally on the agenda for consideration at that time.
You can just put it on the agenda as a chair yourself.
I know, but if everyone here doesn't want to have to deal with it again, then I'm not going to put it on. They should have some say in whether or not we debate this again. Because I can just decide to do it, but I think it's a little nicer to consult with this. All right, is there opposition to that? All right, then I'll just put it on the agenda. Online committee nominations is the next agenda item. Be it resolved that council task the Policies and Procedures Committee to draft procedures for effective online nominations of council committee seats. Thompson, you sent me a series of information. I wasn't sure if that was for board or council.
That was for board.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay.
I realized it like halfway through when I was reading this, I'm like, wait, this looks really familiar, and I was like, oh.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, council has committee seats. I'm
Yeah.
not opposed to this, and I think it's actually a pretty good idea to have an online nomination system for people interested in committees, to just be put in a pool so the council can consider them, and I don't have to personally manage a Google form for it in the future.
So did you want to go council?
We could, yeah.
Okay.
Or if it might be easier to have the discussion on board at the
I mean, council can vote to make it happen, and the board will do it. So is there a second for the motion? Matthew? All right, is there any opposition to tasking Policies and Procedures Committee to draft procedures for effective online nomination of council committee seats?
This is not so much it's not so much an opposition, but can we make sure that this online is not sensitive to being hacked by external parties?
Yeah, so IT stuff like that is an operational matter for like day-to-day operations, so it would fall to, the risk side will fall to the board of directors to assess, and then the operations will side fall to Kurt to make sure. So, if you trust Kurt to keep your network safe.
If you trust PPC.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be something that's.
The procedure itself will not be, the procedure sets the rules under which the exec will implement it.
So I'm afraid like third-party countries start messing with our things.
I don't think China's trying to hack our PPC membership, but I could be wrong. Especially when council membership is public. All right, so are there any other concerns or comments for this motion? Okay, then Thompson moves the motion, Matt seconds. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? All right, no comment from Ben, so this motion passes. All right, the next motion and discussion item is from Dion regarding MC quality concerns. He has attached a memorandum to the agenda on air quality in the MC building for advocating public university air quality measurement and getting the Federation of Students to conduct its own in the meantime. So I will allow Dion to speak to that first. Oh, you second the motion? All right, so Dion moves, Matt seconds. Dion, you have the right to speak to it as the mover?
Yep, so a couple weeks ago, last week rather, I was looking into a post. Yep, so last week I looked into a post on the r/URU subreddit, and there was a poster that mentioned that the air quality in MC is substandard, and they suspect it's causing them breathing problems. So they personally did some testing on their own air device and measured levels of PM 2.5 particulate, which exceeds 4 times the safe standard. With this motion, basically looking into recommending council to direct Federation staff to do their own independent verification of the air quality in MC, as well as having the university, or lobbying the university rather, to do their own investigation into the matter. I reached out to a student asking for follow-up information. Unfortunately, I didn't receive a great reply. They basically mentioned that they didn't believe that there would be much progress made of this, and they didn't want to continue the discussion further. Regardless, I believe that since they brought it up in the first place, there is a legitimate concern here, and that we should investigate this.
Okay, so Dion has a motion here that is accompanied with this. If you please. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Richard, for doing that. So if you haven't read it, please do so now. Are there comments as well? So Matt, as secondary, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd just like to speak in favor of the general principles here. I'm not sure about the cost with regards to measuring, or if we have anybody who's actually qualified to make air quality measurements within the Federation staff. I just did second this motion because I do completely agree with making sure that we ask the university to conduct these tests and getting that back. So if it's amenable to you, I'd like to take out the pieces with the Federation independently verifying, and if we don't get any traction with the university, then maybe that's something we can consider for our meeting.
That's up to you if you accept it friendly or you want it to be debated by council specifically.
Can we have it debated?
Okay, so that's an unfriendly amendment, so it goes to debate Matthew. Okay. All right, so that's moved by Dion and second, or moved by Matthew, seconded by Dion.
Well, the actual debate.
Oh, sorry, you moved for debate, got it. All right, so it's an unfriendly amendment. that Matthew moves to debate the amendment. Is there a second to debating the amendment? Jason. Okay, so Matt is the mover, Jason is the second. All right, so now debate will proceed. Debate is restricted to whether or not the Federation of Students should be independently verifying air quality tests. So Matt, you were the mover. Would you like to
I
start?
already spoke to it.
Okay, other comments? Jason?
Yeah, I think it's just like a matter of like, as been mentioned, like, does the Federation even have equipment? Does Federation people, like, I believe that the Health and Safety Office of the university is more qualified to do these measurements.
Alex?
So I have one question. That's where at the university rather than feds do air quality measurements take place, and what department does that? If that's the health and safety board, is that correct?
EHS office.
Okay, perhaps we could add that as an advocacy goal, that they confirm the,
Read the
That's already
1,
there.
2, 3, 4, 5, 5th.
Yes.
Be it resolved, Council tasks the VP Education to advocate the University Health and Safety Office to conduct its own independent review of the premises and make public all air quality findings.
So with that being said, is it necessary for feds to confirm it at all, or can we just trust, I believe we could just trust the university to do that.
If it chooses to release, it should.
Jared?
Oh, yeah, I guess I was also wondering if they already do something like this.
I don't know. I can't speak to that. Maybe Matt can, I don't know. Oliver, then Richard?
I believe it's more in our place to recommend actions taken by other more qualified individuals for this matter. I don't think that this falls in our jurisdiction per se. We are here to advocate for the students, not actually conduct tests on air quality and MC. None of us here are, I don't think, are qualified. I don't know, maybe the engineers here, but you know, I certainly am not, and I don't know how many people here are. So I would say it's
Point of information. Council, it is within council's jurisdiction to order the federation to do something like that, and then the council can allot the resources to make that happen. It doesn't mean we should, and it wouldn't be us individually doing it. It would be the exec board would have to do an RFP through board, find someone qualified to do it, hire that person to go and conduct the test, get the test results, make them public. Like there's resource costs to something like this. Sorry, please continue.
I feel like the University of Waterloo might have the resources to conduct our own tests, and I think we should look into that with the other health and safety boards, and we should take more of a position on just lobbying for action taken.
Richard was next, and then we'll go Alex, and then Yusuf, and then Dion.
I just actually have 2 points on that. Dion, do you have sort of an idea of what you'd like to see in terms of, like what, in your mind, what, if feds were to take this on, what would they do?
Doug, we have to stick to speaking order because we're not in a moderated session. So just wait till it's your turn, unless Alex reminds you go immediately.
Yeah, keep it up.
Yep, so realistically, at the end of the day, I just want to see results. And just want to see basically what other tests that are not necessarily verified, and see if there actually are air quality problems within the MC building.
So are we, if feds is tasked with this, so we're gonna go through the RFP process, all of that to hire somebody?
Right, so in that case, I wasn't aware of the process of acquiring and doing tests ourselves, so figured that maybe we could use a university equipment to do that. So to that respect, I do accept the amendment as written now. I'm not like to do that.
So the motion's when we have to finish discussion. Alex is next, then Yusuf, and then do you still want to be?
Yeah. So can I make it friendly after non me or?
No, it has to. We have to vote on it. So Alex.
Well, this point's a little bit invalidated if you've already agreed to making that a friendly amendment. But I was just going to say we could perhaps propose that the exec board look into the feasibility and the costs of an independent assessment, and then come back to us with results. And then if it hasn't been resolved by then we could do something.
I think that's a good idea because then if the university refuses to make it public or refuses to act on it, we can on students' behalf. So, would you accept that as an alternative?
Yes.
Okay, so you're formally moving that?
Yes, I'll formally move that.
Okay, so we have.
I mean, we can also just do it.
Just do it.
Okay. Well, I just changed it in writing. So there's a motion to, so who's in favor of that? Making a recommendation? Okay. Is that universal? Then I'll take that as accepted, and then we'll just explore the council tasks or directs the executive board to verify the feasibility or assess the feasibility of independent verification. So instead of assess the feasibility, assess the feasibility, just stick that in front and replace the federation with the exec board. Okay, so with that, will you withdraw your motion for?
Well, we would still need to strip it out from the.
Oh, we just voted to add, assess the feasibility, task the exec board to assess the feasibility of independent verification.
We'll still want to strip out the approved results to do with the independent verification. Oh, we're amending.
That's what I'm saying. That was just voted to be amended for task the exec board to assess the feasibility.
I withdraw.
Jeez.
What?
When you were the seconder, do you agree to withdraw?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. So now that the procedural hurdles are out of the way, the principal motion then is the entire motion, except instead of directs the federation to independently verify, the council directs or tasks the executive board to assess the feasibility of independently verifying the air quality. All right, Dion.
So, point of clarification there, have we struck in both clauses for directs the federation to verify?
We amended them to read directs or task the executive board to assess the feasibility of.
Okay, and that's both clauses.
For both of them, yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yes.
One more thing, I'd like to self-amend this because I wrote this motion before I got feedback from the student that I asked. Can I move amendment here?
Yes.
Okay.
And it can be friendly if no one objects to it.
Okay, sure. So I'd like to strike out first clause, which is be resolved that council tasks mathematics counselors to follow up the student to obtain additional information regarding findings, yeah. So with regards to that, I followed up the student. They got back to me saying they basically didn't want to continue discussion.
Okay. So if no one objects, then Dion accepts this as a friendly amendment to his own motion. Are there objections? No? Okay, then the first be it resolved is stricken. So, yeah, okay. All right, so now the motion reads, the first word as clause, the first be it resolved is stricken, and the federation independent verification is the exec board assessing the feasibility. Are there any other comments or concerns about the motion? No. All right. The original mover was Dion and the seconder was Matt. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstained? All right, this motion passes. Does anyone want their vote noted on that, by the way? That's kind of an important one.
Is it unanimous?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. You want to be extras? So Christopher or Alex, I'm not. So the meeting of committees, whereas some of the federation's committees have not held their first meeting, be it therefore resolved that the Fed's executive hold a meeting by July 1st for each committee that has not yet held their first meeting. I don't think this is relevant anymore, as now I think all of Matt's committees, all of Kurt's, all of Savannah's have been sent out, and I think all of yours are now, Richard?
Let me double check the pack thing. I have to make sure I sent that out. But yes.
If that's the case, would you like to withdraw this motion? Yeah. All right. So the motion for meeting of committees is withdrawn. Moving on. So discussion for first year council. So Ninja Johari at the end of last term tried to put this on the agenda, and the agenda was like 3 pages long, so we asked her to hold it off, and I said I would bring it on her behalf this term. We used to have a first year council to facilitate first year engagement with the student union. Kind of reach out to students about what Feds does and how they can help them seeking off-site housing, looking at leases, with co-op issues, with academic issues. That's something that Nick wanted to bring back and kind of do a better job of doing engagement with first years. So I put it on the item as an agenda item for discussion from you guys. This is very much up to you. What would you like to do? Anything?
Can I just ask, like, what form that first year council used to take?
Oh, I have no idea. I wasn't here when it existed. Alex.
So I wasn't here either when it existed. So I'm not 100% sure what that would look like. But it seems to me that the best way to engage first-year students in FEDS and how it works would be through getting them onto FEDS committees in the winter term as at large numbers. And then once they get a bit of experience with that, perhaps they might decide to run for FEDS Council the next year. That seems to me to be a much easier solution to engage first years, and perhaps we could do a bit better advertising with that too. Although I'd be interested in hearing what exactly this first year council looks like.
1 second. All right, other, Jerry, Dion, Matt?
Well, I'm thinking if it's a separate first-year council anyway,
It would be a committee of council.
I guess, committee of.
It's just council is what we call a committee that has credit members. Like Education Advisory Council is not a separate decision-making body from this one, it's a subsidiary.
Oh, so it'd just be a committee of student council that mostly deals with first-year students?
Correct.
Yeah, I personally agree with having something like this because I believe that it's easier for first years to start getting into university life, and if from the start we can help them with this, it could help them over second, third, and fourth years be more aware. So yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, Dion was next, and then Matthew.
Yep. So my initial concern was like how first year council would fit into student council, but now that it's like a subcommittee of council, that all makes sense now.
Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, I do want to speak a little bit to what it sounds like the purposes of the first year council can be. I very much like Alex's point on getting people involved. I'm speaking against this motion. Firstly, because
But this is not a motion, this is just a
it's
discussion.
Excellent.
Cool.
Engagement, I think everybody knows, is something that's struggles with. From an operational point of view, our marketing team has been doing some marvelous things for trying to get people to reach out. And I know even within my portfolio, I'm looking, one of my strategic goals this year is to figure out a professional development plan to try and find engaged first year students, get them to engage in my portfolio, hopefully use that as a sort of more productive way than bringing a bunch of people in a room and trying to have just one meeting. It's not a bad idea. I just think we would want to have a very clear idea of what the first year council would be, how people would be selected, and making sure that it's not a committee that in itself drives disengagement, because we'll have a poor experience with our first committee that things can go down.
So, I guess we'll go below next, Katie, and then anyone else? Yep, Jason. Okay. So, quickly, you could personally write a letter to every single first year. Bilal, go ahead.
Yeah, so along the same vein as what Matt is saying, having a council that's titled first year council and that is subsidiary to this main council kind of makes it seem like they're in training wheels and we are the real decision-making body. So I agree that some sort of marketing effort to get them more engaged with council in general is a good idea, and I'm not sure if sectioning off another body is the best approach.
Katie?
I've seen mock councils for first years work very well. NSHOP runs mock council for our first year rep to get them sort of exposed to how council works, because it's very intimidating to come into this room where the rules are all different. And I've seen mock councils work very well at conferences where you have a bunch of first years all in the same room for an entire day and they go through council procedures and write their own motions. And I've seen that work very well for getting first years to be more involved in council in the future. I don't know about like a long-term council that meets regularly throughout the term.
So one thing I might add here was that it might be worth having, I don't know what your thoughts on this, Matt, is. This kind of falls into your portfolio, maybe Savannah's a little bit, but like a dedicated first year commissioner, a first year representative. If it was representative, I'd say it should probably just go to the council, but just have something here in a non-voting capacity that just kind of says, you know, this is our problems as first years, we want you to look at this, like, why aren't you doing that? Something to that effect. I don't know what your thoughts are on having a commissioner for this, or it's a waste of time.
And I guess this brings me back to my first point, which is what is, I don't I also don't know anything about what this council was. Nikto was around the university for a while, so she had more experience than I did in more historical context. It's a question, is this something where we are trying to figure out people who can serve on the council in the future? Is it trying to identify student issues? Is it trying to be a place for airing of grievances without knowing what specifically the purpose of this council is?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be
either from NICTA or from council, us as current council in general, what we would want outcomes of first year engagement to be. I think it's a little premature to say whether council is or isn't the best way to go that. If people want to have further discussions on first year engagement, I think that would be a great initiative for council to have.
Yeah, well, I think that's where this was kind of going. I have no idea what the structure of first year council is. I don't know if it's worth investing a lot of time to look into it. If it's something we got rid of, likely because it wasn't effective. But I think the intent behind this was how do we engage first years and kind of get them involved in their decision making, and better if we can train people in first year what Feds does for them and how they can use these services and how these services are governed, then they might have more of a stake in it as time goes forward. The same way the university got students involved with Portal in first year. So like our year's leading, I've never used Portal, I don't care about it, but first year seem to use Portal for everything, so.
Just iterate. I'm not opposed to having a first year council. I'm just opposed to talking about having a first year council without knowing what our goals are for engagement.
Is this something that EAC could look into?
If that's what council wants, we can have EAC look into it. We already have a full rich plate.
Yes, Jason.
I was actually going to move that this be sent to the engagement task force.
That's for GM. So
or even to PAC.
Actually, that's probably a good place to send it. So, will you?
Okay, I'll motion to refer first year, the question of first year representation to President's Advisory Council.
Okay. First year representation and engagement?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a motion to refer the discussion on first year representation and engagement to the President's Advisory Council or committee. Is moved by Jason, seconded by Thompson. So all those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstained? Okay. So that's unanimous. All right, the last agenda item is Feds and Imprint Elections Promotion. This is a discussion item, not a motion. Some students expressed concern regarding communication of polling sites, including super poll sites, or super vote sites, I don't know. Election promotion and awareness campaigns by both Imprint and Feds, failing to reach students kind of beyond the physical premises of the SLC, particularly not in residence, and advocacy to government, and for us to advocate to the government that student voting locations on campus should be consistent between federal and provincial elections. So these were a couple concerns that were raised to me, and I think Gianna received a few as well. So go ahead, Matt, take it away.
This almost all falls under my portfolio. On the topic of consistency between provincial and federal elections, I agree with the sentiment that this discussion is motivated by. I was very dissatisfied with elections in Ontario. This last election, we are going to be sending a sternly worded letter to Elections Ontario that's being drafted. I believe USA will also be doing some ongoing advocacy on making sure that sites are provided regardless of when the election date is held. We're a little different than other schools, and I think that might be why Elections Ontario treated us without giving us a super full site where you could vote for anybody within the riding regardless of where you live. Just so everybody's aware, how it was is we had a polling station in SLC that was only for University of Waterloo residents. So anybody who is not in UWP but in any of our other university residents can vote residences could vote there, but not somebody who, I don't know, lived in Alberta or Leicester, versus the federal election where you could vote for any candidate you wanted, regardless of where in the riding you wanted to be.
You can also vote for other ridings.
Yeah, that was advanced polling. This was a whole other thing, and I think that kind of polling might just be an Elections Canada thing. We can certainly push for it.
So maybe we can bring that up at EAC and see if we can kind of get USA involved in that. I think that's probably a good idea, getting some consistency between federal and provincial elections market.
So just speaking to why it happened was largely because university campuses don't tend to be very populated during the summer, unless be an exception, and we did reach out to Elections Ontario. Thank you to Councillor Small for actually pointing out that it wasn't a Super Bowl site, or I wouldn't have spotted that myself. So a lot of the reason we didn't engage is because we were shifting gears in our marketing. We had been going for multiple months under the assumption that it was going to be a Super Bowl site, and then we had 2 weeks to kind of shift gears. On the topic of engagement outside of the SLC, people felt that was a little lackluster. We can certainly look into trying to make sure that people are out in the community more, or out around campus more during municipal elections and the
Yeah, so a lot of
elections.
students brought up that SLC marketing was great, but beyond the SLC things kind of scaled off exponentially.
I think the main thing that we did was, the main things that we did for sending out the best promo team around campus day of, we have limited bandwidth on how many posters we send out. I think there are only 6 slots for posters in the Fed's poster runs, so we have to prioritize, and don't know. I think we did get elections posters out, but there's always limited uptake with posters, and we have a limited size for a promo team, so we'll try and find innovative ways to be better for the municipal elections.
Societies involved in elections promotion at all?
Purely voluntary. The stuff we did was because I reached out to Feds and was like, can I advertise what you guys are doing?
Okay, I think that's an avenue I think we
Yeah,
can
we advocated through clubs. Don't know if we can go to say this extensively. I can make sure that makes it into the school election.
Perfect. Bilal?
Yeah, well, one thing that I'd like to be noted and that I fell under the radar for this election was special ballot registration. So people who wish to vote outside of Waterloo and in their home riding had that special ballot deadline of June 1st at 6 p.m. that very few people were aware of. And had they filed in paperwork for the mail-in ballot, which you could do online, and it's a very simple process, a lot more people would have just voted with whatever ID they had, and would have reduced a lot of confusion that happened on election day. Since many people felt that they could vote for their home riding on election day, which is obviously not possible. So yes, I'd like that to also be considered, just advertising the special ballot process and mail-in ballots more.
Sorry.
We had it in our marketing materials, and then it's difficult to get across, but we'll make sure it stays.
I would like to highlight though that quite a few students did reach out, at least to me, and said that they really enjoyed the debates that happened in Bomber, and the meet and greets, or the debates that happened at, I think, Laurier, and the meet and greets in Bomber, and they thought that that coverage was pretty good, and that was kind of a first, I guess. I mean, what, 13 years ago was the last time this happened, so.
So since getting Carrie, our advocacy marketing specialist, on board, we've had I think some great strides in engagement with students on elections. We're still learning with how to promote elections, especially during a summer term. If any of you want to connect with me offline with ideas on how we can better engage it, I love hearing ideas on how we can reach out to students for elections, because I find it something that is difficult to do well.
2 other comments students brought up. One was that Feds and Imprint kind of had different approaches to going about it, and then a more concerted effort about common ground materials. Like normally Imprint holds Feds accountable, but by working with Imprint on common ground promotion like elections would be better, and that we should meet more regularly with them to do that. And then the second thing was maybe that, and I don't know if this exists, but a best practices guide for elections and like saying, you know, provincial, municipal, federal, best practices. Perfect, thank you. Other comments on this agenda item? All right, no, then we move on to new business. Is there any item for business that councilors wish to bring up in new business? No, then I have three minor updates. They will come to you in the next council agenda or down the line for a committee. The first is there's an internal governance report on the Federation and what we can do better. And one of the things that recommended was having a communication and consultation policy that kind of outlines what the expected communication practices of executives, board, and council are, as well as outlining it for full-time staff too. So that's something that I think we should kind of have discussion at. That's more oriented towards PPC and exec board. Then another suggestion from the same document was that there should be a councilor's code of conduct and like an agreement for councilors as representatives as we move towards a stronger meeting of delegates model where you represent the shareholders of the corporation. There's an expectation that you should have an actual on-paper obligation to represent the best interests of your constituents in the conduct of your conduct here. And then the last one was just that Richard and I have been, and Elizabeth have been in communication with Victoria Gray, the executive editor of Imprint, for trying to get our regular meetings with Imprint going again. That was something that happened when Chris Lewis was president, kind of phased out when Feds had to take over the Imprint office. And it kind of cut off our nose to spite our face, and we're trying to rebuild that connection. So that's it from me. Without further ado, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, Oliver, seconded by Dion. The motion carries. All right.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Could you say Tuesday? Because I believe you've got it.
Okay, so we put up on Tuesday.
Yeah.